All right, so the big news that we've had over the last couple of days is that the government is planning on reducing immigration targets, right? We're planning on lowering the amount of immigrants that will come to Canada over the next couple of years. And I'll give you my thoughts on what I think this will do and how it'll affect the housing market. And I honestly don't think it'll do much, right? If you want my honest opinion really quickly, our population has grown so much in the past 8-9 years, right? I think the population's gone up by 6 million people, which is a lot for the amount of people that we had before, right? I think the country had 35 million people. Now we're at about 41 million, maybe 42 million, around there. So the amount of people in the country has grown by a lot. And obviously we don't have enough housing for people. So real estate prices went up, rental prices went up. There's just not enough housing to house these people. And we aren't building homes fast enough. We don't have enough skilled labor to build those houses. And so we're now in a situation where, for more like political gain, they're just reducing immigration targets to almost win back a voter base. So I really don't think this will do much for housing. I think this is more of a play for the party that's in power right now to just gain some votes for the next election. Because I think people from all sides of the political spectrum are very unhappy with what's happening right now. And there's more of an anti-immigration feeling in Canada, which is very strange because Canada is a country that has people from every part of the world, It's almost like when I go to Toronto, I hear every pretty much language other than English. Of course, I hear English and everyone speaks English, but if you're just around people in Toronto, you hear every language from, Spanish to South Asian, languages like Hindi, Gujarati, Chinese, different European languages, right? Like, it's amazing, and it's very cool that we have that here. But at the same time, over the past, I would say 6 to 7 years, it just seems like they've been favoriting and bringing in mostly just one type of people. And it seems like it's been done on purpose, right? It seems like it's been done, I think, to bring in cheaper labor. I think this whole huge immigration rush was just to bring cheap labor into the country. And really, what it's done is it's benefited, the millionaire, billionaire class in Canada. And it's suppressed wages for average people in the country. And then we're now in a situation where we have assets that have exploded, like housing, and rental prices really high. And now we have the average wage in Canada hasn't really gone up very much at all in the past 8 to 10 years. GDP per capita hasn't gone up either, so our productivity isn't going up. And so now it's very much like it's all catching up to the government now. And obviously they have to make this move because I think their popularity is now going down so much. And what's so crazy about all this is, most of the people that have come in, right, are Indian, right? I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say they're Indian because they are Indian. And what's so crazy is I've had conversation with Indian people, for example, few open houses. Maybe this was about 3 weeks ago. Okay. An Indian couple came into the open house I was at, and they were asking me who lives in the area. Okay, the area of the open house. And I told them, well, there's a lot of Indian people because there were in the specific area. And they said, well, we live in a very Indian area and we want to move to an area that's not as Indian. They wanted to move to a more diverse area. That's literally what they told me. And it was really interesting because, it's like these were Indian people telling me that they wanted to move to a less Indian area, like a more of a diverse area, because realistically, like, that's not the true old Canadian, experience. Um, the Canadian experience is a mixed, bunch of people, right? Let me pause this. The Canadian experience is really when people from all cultures are together, right? Not just mainly one, right? And these people that came to me during the open house, they made it so clear that where they live now, and they are Indian, that their whole area is also only Indian. And they want to move to a place where there's all cultures. And it's really interesting because that's how Canada was forever, for a long time, right? And, it's just interesting seeing these things in the news where it's like, immigration is obviously like, it's part of Canada. It's always been a part of Canada, but the way it's been handled in the last 8 years is crazy, And it seems like it was done to favor a certain, group of people, meaning like big companies. That's what I think happened. It was mainly done to suppress wages, bring in cheap labor, cheap workers, and it's just like now they're backpedaling, and it's very confusing, all of this. And I honestly, how would I think it'll affect housing is it won't. I think housing is still going to remain very expensive. Rent is going to remain expensive. Rent prices have actually now started to come down, which is interesting. The fact that rental prices have come down is just showing that, okay, people can't even afford that rent, and there's less demand for rent right now, a little bit less rent demand. So what's happening now is that people are lowering their rent so they can rent their units faster. And it's a very interesting situation. I think, do I think rent's going to keep going down forever? I don't know, right? It's so hard to tell what's going to happen with rental prices, home prices. Again, like I said previously, these interest rate cuts are already priced into mortgage rates. They really are in the fixed rate market. Yeah, variable rates are now going to be cheaper a little bit. This is a little bit better for people who already own variable mortgages. They're going to have that relief, right? But in terms of like rental market, the fact that the rental market in Canada is now, or in Toronto, let's say, or Vancouver is now slowing down is very interesting, because if that goes down, then people may not be able to cover, expenses with rent because rent goes down, and then that'll force them maybe to sell, and that'll cause prices to go down even further. So a lot can happen if rental prices keep going down, right? And obviously if immigration slows down, that means rent could also slow down further. And so this is an interesting situation, we have to just keep our eyes on everything and see what happens, right? And also, articles that I've been reading says, immigration applications have been declining for years. Our public or global reputation is suffering, and we've faced criticism now for exploitation and issues like modern slavery. So I don't know if you guys saw that, but the fact that Canada is now labeled and has been connected and associated with the terms of modern slavery, like how crazy is that? And it says the country's under pressure to improve its policies or risk losing its status as an immigration leader, right? Right? If people see Canada as a modern slavery company, or modern slavery country, are people going to want to keep coming here? No, of course not. And that'll of course hurt us in the future, right? If no one wants to come to Canada, and people aren't having kids in Canada, that's really going to affect our country. And so, it says here Canada plans to start tracking departures of immigrants, and that many may leave shortly after arriving, potentially impacting population estimates. So if people come to Canada and then start leaving and not staying, that's also going to affect our country, right? And so all these things affect the housing market, right? Public policy, the things that political parties announce, like these things do affect the housing market. This is all connected, right? The economic stuff that happens, the political stuff that happens, the buyer-seller mentalities, obviously financial stuff that happens with people obviously affects housing and what they do. And so this is all very interesting stuff. And, I really don't like to dive into politics too much because I think I like to focus more on economics. But I think politics does affect the housing market. But I think politics it can get so, I don't know, heated. People just love to go back and forth and argue about political stuff all the time. And I don't know. I feel like it's important to discuss it, but I think I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan of focusing on it. Yeah, I'm talking about in this video because it's a big thing that was announced recently. But I do think that, this is really not going to have a huge effect on the housing market. Maybe in the future it'll have some effect, but over the next couple of years, I don't think it'll do anything, right? Yeah, having less people coming into the country, there's already so many people here. There's already so little housing. And it's just, it's crazy that story, it's so funny that, it's and I can imagine, I'm half Greek, right? My mom was born in Greece, and it's imagine in Canada, there was just Greeks everywhere, only Greeks. And let's say I lived in a community of only Greeks, maybe I would like it, but at the same time, I think maybe I would get annoyed. Maybe if they were Greeks that I didn't like to live around, maybe I would want to go to an area where there's less Greeks because maybe it would be just too many Greek people, right? And I think Canada has always been a mixed culture society. We haven't really just been focused on, bringing in one culture like they have recently. And, I hope it changes, because I think it's confusing, because even the people I've had conversations with, from the Indian community say there's too many Indians coming in now, right? And they're Indian and they're telling me that. And so I think it's very interesting. And, I love Indian people. I have Indian friends. I like Indian people, right? I'm not saying that I don't like Indian people, but I just find it so interesting how people from the Indian community say that they don't want to live with Indians, and when I play this scenario out in my head, I'm like, well, what if I lived with, Greeks or people that I'm, my background, and there were only that people in an area? Would I want a mix, right, to experience the Canadian, dream, I guess, which has always been a mixed culture society? Yeah, of course. Right? It's understandable why they're saying those things. And, we just have to wait and see what happens. Definitely is, some big news. Do I think it'll affect the housing market? Not really. And hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.